Welcome to World News America. Tonight, the rhetoric between the United States and North Korea has hit new levels. After promising earlier this week that Kim Jong-un's regime would face fire and fury if they continued with their threats, President Trump now says maybe his language wasn't tough enough, and he didn't rule out a preemptive strike. It comes less than 24 hours after Pyongyang announced it had a plan to fire 4 missiles near the US territory of Guam. The BBC's Nick Bryant reports.
It's from his golf club in New Jersey during his working vacation that Donald Trump is managing this standoff. And this afternoon, he was back in his trademark suit and tie and using his trademark tough talk in response to the latest threats from Pyongyang.
I will tell you this, if North Korea does anything in terms of even thinking about attack of anybody that we love or we represent or our allies or us, they can be very, very nervous. I'll tell you what, and they should be very nervous because things will happen to them like they never thought possible.
Earlier this week, he warned North Korea of fire and fury, raising the chilling spectre of a nuclear confrontation. His only regret, maybe that fiery rhetoric wasn't incendiary enough.
The people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. And it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. So, if anything, maybe that statement wasn't tough enough.
Earlier on news bulletins in North Korea, the customary martial music and also an unusually specific military threat. The Hwasong-12 rocket will be launched by the Korean People's Army and will cross the sky above Japan and fly 3,356 kilometers for 1,065 seconds before hitting the waters 30 to 40 kilometers away from Guam. This is a Hwasong-12 missile on parade in Pyongyang this spring. Kim Jong-un can back his fiery words with weaponry. Today on the tropical island of Guam, it wasn't so much a case of fire and fury as wet and wild. The news crews converging there, producing what looked like tourist advertisements. People heading to the beach rather than fleeing. Locals not particularly concerned at the threat that North Korean missiles might soon come raining in.
We're kind of just used to the whole ebb and flow of hearing that we're going to be bombed and then it not happening and then hearing about it again. So it's not anything that's new to us.
It never follows through, so I wasn't really concerned. And I think it's probably like a distraction, maybe political kind of move, you know, on the U.S. and Korea side, just to get attention, maybe.
Guam is in the firing line because it's American territory that's home to 2 big U.S. military bases. An attack here would be an attack on America. As well as refusing to back down from his threat of fire and fury, Donald Trump did say he considered negotiations. But while the rhetoric is being ratcheted up, fears will grow of some terrible miscalculation that could turn this war of words into a major conflict. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Washington.
Well, for more on the rising tensions and possible responses, I spoke a brief time ago with retired General Mark Kimmitt. He formerly served as Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. General, thanks very much for coming in.
Sure, Jane.
The big question is, how likely is military conflict at this point?
I really believe that, as your commentator said, short of a miscalculation, I find it to be very unlikely that that would happen.
But how does this rhetoric complicate any military response? Does it add an extra element of uncertainty and volatility?
I don't think so. I think the fact remains that if you take all of the comments being made, not only those by the President, by Secretary Mattis, by Secretary Tillerson, they're taking a very tough line against Kim Jong-un, who has, like his predecessors for the last 25 years, has absorbed everything that has been put at him and said about him by the international community and continued to develop nuclear weapons and the ability to use those across intercontinental. So I think this is a smart move on the part of the President to ratchet up a clear message of not only deterrence, but basically punishment should the President of Korea take action.
But would he go through with it? I mean, that comment of his where he says, even if North Korea even thinks about attacking, things will happen that they never thought possible. What does that say to you? Is that talk of a preemptive strike?
Well, no, in fact, what that tells me is that he's speaking not only to Korea but to China. China has more to lose in this exchange than anyone else. China also has the most ability to solve this problem, and China has been very reluctant to step in. So the message to China is, if you don't want to take action, if you don't want to solve the problem through diplomacy, through economic sanctions, then you're going to have to depend on the Americans to make these choices.
Well, all right, but if North Korea does launch missiles towards Guam, would that be an act of war, and what should be the appropriate military response?
Well, as so many people say, I don't want to talk about a hypothetical. I think, would the Secretary of Defense be sitting in this chair, he would say, we're prepared to respond to any contingency. We have a full range of capabilities to respond to that. So anyone who decides that they want to attack the United States or its territories needs to be prepared for any of a number of options that we could throw it against them. Secretary Mattis has been very clear that would result in the end of the nation and the destruction of all its people.
Well, that would be one set of consequences, but what about Seoul? What about Japan?
Certainly, and we had those same concerns in the Cold War as well, as the United States was looking across the border at the Soviet Union. These are all issues that are taken into account in all of this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be lobbing missiles at each other anytime soon. There's still tremendous number of options, diplomatic, economic, and I think we'll see the full range of those options being deployed before we can even start talking about military options.
General Mark Kimmitt, thank you very much for joining me.
Sure.